Between 1970 and 1990, over 50 British snacks vanished. 10 topped every poll as most missed. In 2004, 10,000 Britons voted Texan Bar #1. In 2008, Spangles won. These aren't random memories. Your childhood treats were systematically removed. I'm diving into why. You'll discover the truth about 10 snacks that should never have disappeared. You remember these snacks better than entire years of your life. Ask someone about their 1970s maths teacher. They'll struggle. Ask about Spangles or Tuda crisps. Watch their eyes light up. Most snacks didn't vanish because you stopped buying them. Some sold millions. The real reasons? Corporate takeovers, production costs, regional brands killed off, cold business decisions, nothing to do with what you wanted. Let's start with the sweet that defined an entire era. Spangles, the square sweet that defined a generation. Spangles weren't from the 1970s, born in 1950, middle of rationing. Mars launched a sweet-needing 1 ration point instead of 2. Genius, that rounded square with the dip in the middle. Mars said it reached the heart of the flavour. You believed it. That belief became part of eating them. Flavours kept changing. Started simple, strawberry, blackcurrant, orange. Then acid drop, Old English varieties, licorice, mint humbug, pear drop, aniseed, treacle. Remember mystery flavour? Argued about for years, but was eventually revealed as grapefruit. Old English Spangles came in striped wrappers, each one a surprise that lasted forever. You'd roll them around until sharp edges formed, sharp enough to slice your mouth. Everyone thinks health concerns killed Spangles, sugar panic, government pressure, but that was all wrong. Mars replaced them with Skittles in 1984. No health crisis, just business. Kids from the 1950s and 1960s grew up and stopped buying boiled sweets. Mars saw a demographic shift, and Skittles had global potential, so Spangles were sacrificed. They didn't ask you, just erased them. In 1995, Woolworths brought them back briefly. 4 varieties and they sold like crazy, but it was temporary. You never stopped wanting them. Next, a crisp that belonged to the Northeast, until it didn't. Tuda crisps, the canny bag that defined a region. Giz a canny bag o' Tuda. If you grew up in the Northeast, those words hit hard, not just advertising. Cultural identity like a password. Tuda started in Sunderland in 1947 and focused on North East and Scotland. And by mid-1950s, they claimed 2/3 of the market. That's dominance. Flavours were brave: tomato ketchup, hot dog and mustard, pickled onion. This was the 1970s, where cheese and onion felt exotic, but Tuda did gammon. Spring onion, curry. They were fearless. The advertising made them legendary. 1970s, TV showed a paper boy that had been bribed with a canny bag to deliver papers to a tower block. There were 29 stories, and the lift was broken. He climbed all those stairs. Later, adverts brought back the star, Alan Machin, the grown-up paper boy who was now rich, driving in a Rolls-Royce, still eating Tuda specials. The message is clear: you can leave the Northeast, get wealthy, but you'll never forget Tuda. Here's the betrayal. Tuda was bought by Smiths in 1960 for £1 million. Then Smiths got bought by PepsiCo, and they ended up owning both Smiths and Walkers by 1989. The Tuda brand died in 2003. Walkers wanted core products only, which meant 56 years of history. Gone. Someone in a boardroom decided regional brands didn't fit. The Northeast hadn't stopped buying Tuda. It was taken away. Next snack? They sold fear, and you loved it. Smith's Horror Bags. The spooky snacks that terrified parents. 1974, Smiths launched Horror Bags. Fangs in cheese and onion, bones in salt and vinegar, then ribs and claws. 1978, Bats. each shaped like its name. Stick fangs in your mouth like vampire teeth, then eat them. The 1970s were weird for kids. Doctor Who was terrifying. Children of the Stones gave nightmares, and so Smiths turned that moment into crisps. The mascot was Dracula, played by Frank Thornton. Their giveaways made them special. The packets came with glow-in-the-dark stickers, and you could send empty packets away for prizes like Dracula masks, hand puppets, board games. Tabloids tried whipping up controversy. Ex-certificate snacks are inappropriate for children. The tabloids tried to create moral panic. Smiths responded brilliantly. It's good for children to be on fun terms with things that frighten them. You weren't traumatized because you loved them. Tabloids dropped it, and the horror bags made £4 million that year. In the 1970s, that's massive. Horror bags vanished early 1980s, not because of the panic, but because Smiths moved on as the shapes complicated and the giveaways got costly. Another victim of profit margins. Next dominated a different space, the pub. Cheese moments? The pub snack that smelled like chaos. One fan called them the favourite of neglected children in pubs everywhere, which is perfect because that's exactly right. You'd sit in the beer garden on Sunday afternoon while your parents were inside with friends. You'd be outside with a Coke and 10 pence, and from behind the bar came that distinctive smell of cheese moments. They smelled wrong, like cheese left in the sun, but tasted incredible. Salty, cheesy, crunchy, and addictive in ways regular crisps never were. The texture was different too, not quite a crisp and not quite a puff, but something in between. They were cereal-based, crunchy but not brittle, and they'd stick to your teeth while leaving that cheese flavour coating your mouth. Some found that off-putting, but others thought it was the whole point because you wanted that flavour to linger. Cheese moments were discontinued years ago, but in 2021, Walkers responded to a petition saying, "While we can't promise a comeback, our teams share the enthusiasm." That's corporate speak for "no chance, mate." They're gone and not coming back, but you can't let them go. The truth is simple. Cheese moments didn't sell enough. Bacon fries and scampi fries were always more popular, so when companies streamline their ranges, the weakest performer goes first. But sometimes, a snack didn't need economics to work because it just needed flavour, and nobody did flavour like this next one. Smith's Bovril Crisps. The beefy crisp that tasted like liquid cow. The beefy flavour of Smith's Bovril Crisps is still discussed online with reverence decades after they vanished. That's not nostalgia, that's genuine loss. Bovril Crisps were made with actual liquid cow extract, giving them an intense bovine flavour that stuck to your fingers. They tasted like someone had liquefied a Sunday roast and sprayed it onto crisps. Meaty, salty, and overwhelming in the best possible way. They came in distinctive white bags that were simple and clean with no fancy graphics needed. The word Bovril did all the work because everyone knew Bovril as that thick, dark paste you spread on toast or made into a hot drink. They sold into the 1990s in pubs and train stations, but when PepsiCo bought Smith's, Bovril became the vastly inferior beefy flavour. Same packaging but different taste, the quality was gone and the magic lost. Bovril is a brand name, so using it meant paying licensing fees. When PepsiCo looked at those fees, they thought, we can just call it beefy and save money. So they dropped the Bovril name and thought nobody would notice. But you noticed, of course you did. Sometimes though, a snack didn't disappear. It got its identity stolen, which somehow feels worse. The great name changes. Marathon and Opal Fruits, death by rebranding. Specific betrayal in having childhood renamed. Marathon wasn't just what you called Snickers, something different, something yours. Mars changed name in 1990 for global consistency. Suddenly, you had to walk into shops and ask for a Snickers like Americans. Same thing happened with Opal Fruits when they changed to Starburst in 1998 for the same reason. But Opal Fruits had poetry and magic. It sounded like something from a children's story. Starburst just sounds like a chemical explosion. Nobody asked if you minded because these decisions were made for international marketing departments. These were people who'd never stood in a British corner shop on Saturday morning and who didn't understand what these names meant to you. The pushback was fierce with letters to papers, complaints, and petitions everywhere. These name changes touched something deeper about British distinctiveness in an increasingly uniform world. Let's get back to proper vanishings because the next one tested whether you were truly committed. Texan Bar, the mighty chew that nearly broke your jaw. Launched in 1973 by Rowntree Mackintosh during peak Wild West fever, when cowboys were everywhere, on TV, in comics, at the cinema. Rowntree grabbed that opportunity perfectly. That gold wrapper with the stars and stripes font and cartoon cowboy on the front was instantly recognisable. The slogan "Sure is a mighty chew" later changed to "A man's gotta chew what a man's gotta chew." Was brilliant marketing because it turned eating chocolate into a character test, a challenge, and a rite of passage. And they weren't lying about the chew. Texan bars were genuinely, impressively, and sometimes dangerously chewy with nougat and a toffee coating. Simple enough on paper, but in practice, especially in winter, that bar became a weapon. Playgrounds had legends about Texan bars. Kids who'd supposedly chipped teeth or someone's cousin who'd been chewing one for 3 hours straight. These stories spread like wildfire, and instead of putting you off, they made Texans even more appealing. It became a badge of honour, because you weren't just eating chocolate, you were conquering it. Here's the truth that changes everything. Everyone remembers them as impossibly chewy, rock hard, and jaw-breaking. But the reality is that texture varied wildly with temperature. In summer, they were almost pleasant and genuinely enjoyable. Come November, though, they transformed into something completely different, even though it was the same bar with the same recipe. Aztec Bar, Cadbury's Mars killer that never killed. Cadbury looked at Mars's stranglehold and said enough. Mars dominated everything. A Mars a day helps you work, rest and play. Everywhere. Mars owned lunchboxes. It had nougat instead of toffee like Mars, plus caramel, and, crucially, Cadbury's milk chocolate. Fans insisted it was superior and creamier, but the genius move was the pricing strategy. Aztec was deliberately cheaper by half a penny less than Mars. Doesn't sound like much, does it? But in 1975, that half penny made a difference. The TV adverts were extraordinary for their time with Aztec pyramids, elaborate costumes, and a massive budget that suggested Cadbury really meant business. The message was crystal clear. This wasn't just another chocolate bar, it was an experience and a journey. Here's the twist that changes everything. Aztec bars weren't discontinued because they failed. Let me repeat that clearly. They weren't cancelled because nobody bought them. By the mid-1970s, they were selling respectably with decent, profitable numbers. The problem was simple. They were never going to dethrone Mars, and they were expensive to produce. Cadbury faced a choice: increase the price and lose the cheaper-than-Mars advantage, or cut their losses entirely. They cut their losses. The Aztec was killed not by poor sales or consumer rejection, but by narrow profit margins and corporate impatience. They briefly revived it for the millennium as another nostalgia play, but it didn't last because the moment had already passed. Speaking of moments passing, the next entry is one of the most mourned losses of all. Fry's 5 centers. 5 chocolates in one bar. This one's different from the others. 5 centers wasn't a 1970s creation. It was launched way back in 1934. By the time you were eating them in the 1970s, they were already vintage. representing a connection to chocolate's golden age and your parents' or even grandparents' childhoods. 5 distinct flavours: raspberry, coffee, black currant, orange and lime. Each segment was individually wrapped in dark chocolate and hid a different coloured fondant inside. It was a ritual. You'd try identifying each flavour before biting into it, guessing which was which and making a game out of it. So why did 5 centers die? The official reason was production costs, which is accurate but doesn't tell you the real story behind it. Each single 5 centers bar required 5 completely separate fondant batches. That's 5 different flavours, 5 different colours, and 5 different mixing processes. Then each segment had to be moulded individually, wrapped individually in chocolate, then assembled together, and finally packaged. It was incredibly labour-intensive. By the 1990s, automation was absolutely everything in manufacturing. Efficiency and lean production ruled the industry. 5 centers was stubbornly artisanal in an age of mass production. It couldn't be streamlined or simplified without completely destroying what made it special in the first place. Sometimes, the old ways simply don't fit with new economics. Sometimes, quality and mass production just can't coexist peacefully. 5 centers was a casualty of the lean production revolution. It was literally too good for its own good. And that brings us to our final snack, one that never really left, except it absolutely did. Toffo. The tubes that lasted all week. Tofos were genuinely democratic, which is the best word to describe them. When you only had 2 pence left till Saturday, you could still walk into the corner shop with your head held high and walk out with something worthwhile. 6 or 7 discs came in each tube, all individually wrapped and lasting you days if you had any willpower at all. They came in several varieties. Plain caramel was the most popular, while mint had a devoted cult following. Then there was the assorted pack with apple, chocolate, banana, pineapple and strawberry flavours. The slogan was hilariously accurate. Tofos make your teeth stick together. They absolutely did stick with impressive determination. But Tofos lasted forever in more ways than one. Not just stuck in your teeth, but actually in the shops too. They ran from the 1960s all the way to 2008, which means they survived the entire 1970s, the 1980s, the 1990s, and made it well into the 2000s. They outlived almost everything else on this list. They didn't die in the big nostalgia wave or get caught up in corporate takeovers and restructuring. They just quietly disappeared in 2008 when nobody was really paying attention. No announcement, no final run, no fanfare. There one year, completely gone the next. Sometimes things slip away silently like that. There you have it. 10 snacks that defined 1970s Britain. All gone. Some killed by economics, some by corporate mergers, some by regional identity sacrificed, some too expensive, too complex, too perfectly tuned to moment that couldn't last. Real question, were they actually better? Or do you just miss being young? Both. These weren't objectively superior. Bovril crisps were too intense, Texan was a dental hazard, and 5 centers inefficient. But they were yours, and belonged to a specific time and place. Now I want to hear from you. Which do you remember most? Sweet or savoury? Did you chase siblings with horror bags' fangs? What's your corner shop memory? What's your specific snack that defined your childhood? Drop it in comments. Paint that picture. Let's build collective memory of what we lost. Want more Vanished Britain nostalgia? Hit subscribe. So much more to excavate. Thanks for this journey. Until next time, keep those sweet memories alive.